It shouldn't honestly shock anyone that they want to move the civil suit to a federal courtroom. This entire case has been led by the FBI. Everything stated in this video is my opinion and my opinion only. And just like everything else in these cases we discuss here on this channel, everything is alleged.
Mr. Kohberger allegedly stalked one of the victims. That's false. You know that to be false. That Mr. Kohberger allegedly stalked one of the victims. You knew that was false. For anybody who had never heard that before, that question is now planted into them. Unqualified representation that Mr. Kohberger stalked one of the witnesses, and that's false.
We do not have evidence that the defendant had direct contact with 1122 or with residents of 1122, but we can put his phone in that area. There are many residences in that area. It's a dense population of mostly college-related occupants.
Earlier today, I noticed that Sarah reposted some documentation from an account that goes by Matt Black Inc., as I think how you say it, regarding more movement when it comes to the WSU civil suit being filed against Washington State University, where Bryan Kohberger was a TA at the time of the murders, and the 4 families of the Idaho student murders. There is 1 parent per victim that is in authority for the estate of, or representing the state of, for each victim in the civil suit, and 2 tort law firms that are sort of working together on the case with all 4 of the families. Now, one of them is local to Washington and another one is out of state. So just like the way that Bicka Barlow did when she came into work for Bryan Kohberger's defense team from her state, these lawyers are also filing motions to be able to appear in a jurisdiction that they're not licensed in. We can skim through the documents real quick, and I'm doing this from Sarah's Twitter page where she has the full document posted. Now, remember on the 27th, I posted how there were 2 assistant attorney generals now representing WSU for the defense. Those attorneys are now filing this for the defense for this to be moved to a federal courtroom. It says here, please take notice that defendant Washington State University hereby removes to this court the state court action described below. This case alleges a violation of Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972, as well as state law claims. Defendant WSU is an entity of the state of Washington. Plaintiff's complaint has not yet been answered by defendant WSU. And as far as I can tell, at around 5 p.m. on 1/28/26, we don't have an official response. But I'm really wondering if they're going to be like, there was no stalking. We call Bill Thompson to the stand. Actually, again, just pull some very publicly available clips.
Mr. Kohberger allegedly stalked one of the victims. That's false. You know that to be false. That Mr. Kohberger allegedly stalked one of the victims. You knew that was false. For anybody who had never heard that before, that question is now planted into them. Unqualified representation that Mr. Kohberger stalked one of the witnesses, and that's false.
We do not have evidence that the defendant had direct contact with 1122 or with residents of 1122, but we can put his phone in that area. There are many residences in that area. It's a dense population of mostly college-related occupants.
There was no stalking. There was no social media connections. They can't blame WSU for giving him Wi-Fi access. Like, everyone has the internet anywhere. He could have sat at a McDonald's and used the free Wi-Fi. He could have done something on his phone and used his mobile data so that he could stalk the victims and plan out his murders and do everything he needed to do before he did the things, even though there's no proof of that. Even though the prosecution themselves have stated themselves that there's no proof of any of that. So hopefully the attorney generals do the right thing and they say, this entire lawsuit is based off of things that are not true. Yes, he has now pled guilty to the murders of Kaylee, Maddie, Xana, and Ethan. But when it comes to the allegations of what they're claiming WSU allowed in giving him tools and ability by housing him, those allegations are not real because he didn't stalk them. There's nothing for that in there. So I don't know how this lawsuit's even supposed to work. Honestly, I need a lawyer from this area or that works tort cases to help me understand. I know there's a lot of other cases going on that have a lot of people's attention, but somebody, please, somebody in Washington or that does tort stuff or something, explain how a lawsuit full of inaccuracies that are not true to the criminal case itself, can make its way to this and now end up in a federal court. And again, the federal court thing bothers me because the FBI led this entire case. But now we also have one of the attorney generals, assistant attorney generals that are helping WSU. He went to law school at U of I. So I don't know if there's loyalties there. I don't know if he's alumni. I don't know how far deep that goes, but that's not a comfortable feeling. It goes on to say that on January 7th, 2026, a complaint was filed in the Superior Court of Washington for Skagit County, and it gives the cause number 26-2-00034-29. And the long title, because again, each parent is representing each victim. Now, I'll put a link for the live where we went over the entire document down in the description box, because again, it's really full of things that the state themselves have already come out and stated were not true. So I don't know how this is supposed to work. This complaint was served upon defendant WSU on January 7th, 2026. This notice of removal is being filed within 30 days of the filing of the complaint alleging an action under 20 USC 1681 against defendant WSU. Intra-district assignment. Under 28 USC 1331 and 1343, the United States District Courts have original jurisdiction of all civil actions arising under the Constitution, laws, or treaties of the United States. Plaintiffs allege that defendant WSU's actions violated Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972 when defendant WSU remained idle in the face of known extreme and repeated instances of discrimination, harassment, and stalking by Kohberger occurring in its educational program through the entirety of the 2022 fall semester that ultimately culminated in Kohberger that says talking. I think it meant to say stalking. Okay. And then taking the lives of the decedents. Now, again, WSU was dealing with an officer who had just been basically went into the office of his commander and admitted everything, even told them who the person was that was a college student that he was doing nasty things with, he wasn't supposed to be doing. And instead of them doing what they should have done with the person who was admitting to it, they decided to keep it hush-hush, and everyone else that was above him ended up losing their jobs before he ended up losing his job. He actually didn't resign until a week and a half, 2 weeks at the most. No, it was 10 days. It was either November 2nd or November 4th. The bad, nasty cop didn't resign until right before these crimes took place. So in my opinion, and I've said this millions of times at this point, in my opinion, the fact that WSU was already dealing with an officer that was accused of all these things, said he did all these things, there's all kinds of newspaper articles and things that the WSU lawsuit, when we went over it, all those details are in there. It was stuff that I didn't know. But learning all of that, I'm okay, there's no way they're going to have all these people coming into the school making all these complaints, and it's in the same umbrella as what they're already dealing with that they're trying to not drown in, and they're not going to take these complaints seriously. They're going to act like they don't matter. There's got to be a reason why they're not doing more, in my opinion. And again, we have to remember all these people that said all these things about him, even the ones that were in his vehicle, never turned him in as a tip, never called it in, apparently never even honestly discussed it. Never until after his arrest. Even with all these complaints going in, no one in that whole criminal department thought, oh, he could be the dude. Oh my God, he's got the car, all these things. None of them turned him in for a reason. For the exact same reason that Professor Snyder, the one that doesn't like him, literally says in his Idaho State Police interview report that he told the school that firing Kohberger would end up leading to some sort of lawsuit because they didn't have grounds to fire him. That's coming from the professor that didn't even like him. That says a lot to me. All of that says a super lot to me. Let's go ahead and continue. This is a civil action of which this court has original jurisdiction under this code and is one which may be removed to this court by defendant WSU pursuant to 28 USC 1441B, in that it is a civil action founded on a claim or right arising under federal law. The district court also has supplemental jurisdiction over any state law claims pursuant to 28 U.S.C. 1367. An 11th Amendment bar as to supplemental claims does not divest the federal court of jurisdiction over claims arising under federal law. Wisconsin Department of Corrections versus, I'm not going to say how I think that's supposed to be said, but it's a case from 1998 that they're citing. The Western District is an appropriate venue for removal as the judicial district that embraces the place in which the action is pending. Venue is also appropriate in the Eastern District of Washington, and defendant reserves the right to file a motion to change venue thereto. Reserves and immunity. Defendant WSU reserves all rights and defenses, and this notice is made without waiving any defenses defendant WSU may have in response to this lawsuit, because again, they haven't put in their formal response yet. And then it has their supporting documents that they put in here. So basically they're saying that even though Skagit County is correct and the court that it's currently sitting in is correct, given that Title IX of the Education Amendment of 1972 under 20 U.S. Code 1681 is a federal law, that's the reason why it should move to a federal court, which, okay, I can see their argument. But again, the fact that the FBI has led this case from day one, this just sort of gives me a lot of uncomfortable feelings, along again with the fact that the assistant attorney filing for this went to school at the University of Idaho for his law degree. And we already know how I feel about the university and the fact they're hiding something. They're hiding something big. There's nothing that's going to convince me otherwise. They have been in the spotlight for this for way too long. But the fact that, again, everything with Ethan and Xana's timeline is all everywhere, and it has so much to do with the Sigma Chi party, seeing all of those police officers surrounding the Sigma Chi house that one time, that was a lot. Knowing that the Chapins did some sort of like stay in overnight where all the phones and stuff were put up with everyone at the Sigma Chi house. Ethan wasn't even living at the Sigma Chi house. He had been kicked out for grades. He was going to be moving back in apparently, but he was not even living at the frat house. And the fact that they did all those things, and then you see how much Ethan is just being erased from everything. Come on. Come on. There's something else going on there. The school is definitely compensating for something. They're trying to do something. There's nothing that's going to convince me otherwise. So federal court, a guy that went to law school at U of I don't know. According to Cornell University, 20 U.S.C. 1681 is part of the Title IX of the Education Amendments of 1972, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of sex in educational programs or activities receiving federal financial assistance. So I don't really know what that would have to do with this. This law ensures that no person in the United States shall, on the basis of sex, be excluded from participation in, be denied the benefits of, or be subjected to the discrimination under any education program or activity. Prohibits discrimination on the basis of sex in educational programs or activities receiving federal financial assistance. So they're saying that they discriminated against the girls in these reports? I'm really confused on what this means. I'm not a lawyer. I don't pretend to know everything. People that think and try to pretend like I know everything, I don't know everything, and I will tell you that openly every freaking second of the day. I don't know where some of these people get their information from, like for real. But I don't know what this means. Again, we have these complaints being filed by females, and they apparently didn't do enough when it comes to punishing Kohberger, is the whole argument here. So does that mean that they discriminated against the females by not taking them seriously, and that's why it falls under this rule? I'm guessing that's what it means. I'm not going to sit here again and pretend like I know. I will show you my confusion very proudly. So if somebody knows for sure, you can really explain it in sort of like layman's terms, please do so down in the comments. I really hope that some tort attorney gets a hold of these, or some sort of civil rights attorney gets a hold of these and can give us a better definition of what's really going on, especially again with so much inaccurate information in the lawsuit itself. That just is so wild to me that it was even allowed to be filed that way. Now, again, I've said for a long time, and I'm just going to explain it because I know there might be some people watching this who don't really know all of these things, especially with the way the court removed so much fact right in front of our faces. I say this was an FBI-led case because there was an FBI agent on scene before Chief Fry even got back into town that Sunday. The FBI were already boots on the ground in Moscow, Idaho, for reasons a lot of people have discussed and theorized and tried to figure out. It's everywhere, but it's factual. They had several in the area at the time. They did the car work information. They did the phone information. They did the timing advance record information. They did the DNA information when it came to taking swabs from Kohberger. They were the ones who were involved in his arrest in Pennsylvania. The only thing that Moscow did with any of that was watch from afar at a command center over a drone camera. And it was Payne and somebody from ISP. They ended up going in and doing some sort of interview with Kohberger, but the FBI won't let them release it. Moscow doesn't have access to it. It's Pennsylvania property. They also did his phone dump. They also went in and did all the stuff when it came to his computers and blah, 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 blah. There's a reason why they were going to be having the IgG when it came to the DNA of Kohberger. They were going to have the fact that the FBI did that testing and came to that conclusion completely wiped out of the story. Completely wiped out. They are the ones, the FBI took over the IgG work from Othram because Othram failed. Othram promised a 72-hour turnaround, and 18 days later, they had some distant cousins that didn't even share a name that wouldn't even help them. So they had to pack it on up because you failed, broski. You didn't keep your end of the deal, and now we need our shit back. So then it got shipped back to ISP, and then the FBI took over the IgG work, the genealogy work. And on 12/19, Moscow Police Department got a phone call with nothing other than a name. Bryan Christopher Kohberger is the guy that you need to be looking at. And that was it. They shelved their lead suspect. Never looked back. They shelved the unknown male DNA found in the house. Never looked back. Ever. They took the call from the FBI on 12/19 blindly with no information and just started their investigation into Bryan Kohberger and started reverse engineering everything they had to. They didn't even know until the 20th that it came from the genealogy work. That was testified to back in January of 2025. The state did nothing but blame the FBI for the fact that they couldn't give the defense anything that the defense kept asking for. There was over 20 requests for discovery. And almost every time the state finally had something, there was something wrong with it, or there were things missing from it, or it was a complete, total mess that no one could figure anything out for. And we've seen that with the files that we have received ourselves through FOIA requests, not only with MPD, but with other entities as well. The word organization is not in anyone's vocabulary down there. So again, knowing that the FBI took the lead on everything, that there's interviews we're never going to get to hear, that there's stuff with the family, stuff with Dylan and Bethany, stuff with Kohberger's family that we're never going to get to hear because the FBI said so, because they're the ones who did it all. Now this going to a federal court, I'm uncomfortable with. But that's just me. Some other people might feel differently. They might feel like this is where it really needs to go. We'll get more done in a federal court. I just don't feel that way. But also, wasn't the grand jury a federal grand jury? I guess that's another reason to not like this situation, especially knowing what we know now that Steve Goncalves has relayed to other people about what the grand jury members that James Patterson, the book writer, hooked them up with in order to get information about what happened at the grand jury. Everything about Dylan and Bethany is sketchy as shit. They even apparently said, according to Steve Goncalves, Dylan should have been charged. With what? I don't know. He didn't get into too many specifics, but just knowing that, I don't feel comfortable about this whole federal thing. So we're going to see what happens, but I want to know what you guys are thinking about these moves down in the comments. If you liked the way that I present this information and give my opinion, please don't forget to leave a like on the way out. Subscribe to the channel if you have not subscribed already. And please don't forget to make sure that that notification bell is set to all so you don't miss any of my rants, reviews, reactions, updates, or deep dives. See y'all.